Hello folks, this is Mr. O'Brien, and this is page 13 of Dr. Toer's amazing Magic Lantern Show Viewer's Guide. It's a very important page, the end of Reconstruction. So by the early 1870s, Reconstruction was collapsing. Weakened by internal divisions, Southern Republicans could not withstand the very violent attacks by Democrats and their supporters. So basically, the violence and the rage of the white supremacist South was winning out. Economically dominated by the planters, African Americans had too little power to strike back effectively. The bottom line is Northern moderate Republicans stopped caring. They began caring more about the Northern economy, and labor strikes were emerging up north. With the rise of big factories, you get labor strikes. Northern Republicans, struggling with their own problems of political corruption, industrial unrest, the strikes, and nationwide depression, economic depression, grew less willing to intervene in the South. Northerners turned away as Southern Democrats used fraudulent elections, violence, and intimidation to regain political, economic, and social power. And that's what you're going to see depicted in Birth of a Nation. The final blow came with the 1876 presidential election, which was marked by voter fraud on both sides. The Democratic candidate seemed to win the most votes, but Republicans refused to surrender the White House. Fears of a new civil war spread. In early 1877, national Republican leaders struck a deal, a secret backroom deal with Democrats. Republican Rutherford B. Hayes, who got less popular votes, but neither person got enough to win automatically, electoral college votes. But here was the secret deal. Republican Rutherford B. Hayes was declared president, and in return, the Union agreed to end Reconstruction. In other words, Democrats basically said, "We'll give you the presidency. We won't contest Hayes becoming president if you end Reconstruction and all troops leave." And that's what happened. Reconstruction was finally over. Next paragraph. And what that marks is the complete abandonment of 4 million, actually by this point, 4.5 million free African Americans down south. In the decades that followed, African Americans' lives grew harder. This is, by the way, when the era of Jim Crow stepped in. They lose the right to vote, so on and so forth. Lynching begins. By the 1890s, only whites could vote in the South. And when I say lynching begins, it already was there. It wasn't really needed as much during slavery times, but this is when it became an almost daily activity. I mean, there were anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000, 8,000 African Americans, mostly men, that were lynched from the late 1870s to the 1940s. By the 1890s, only whites could vote in the South, and Southern political life was firmly under white control. The quote-unquote Jim Crow system of segregation was put into place, tightly restricting black social and economic life. The institutions African Americans had created during Reconstruction, most notably the independent black church, helped them to survive these painful years, but it was many decades, almost a full century, before America would again confront the questions of freedom and equality. It had failed to solve during Reconstruction. Okay, so again, what you're seeing here is the South going to great lengths to recreate the conditions of slavery, right? So the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery. What do? Slaves get no land, and they come up with sharecropping as a system of labor and labor contracts to try and recreate that. Okay, and don't forget, getting arrested for vagrancy and the convict lease system, so on and so forth. Well, the 14th Amendment is equal protection before the law. You can't discriminate because someone's a different race. So what do? Jim Crow laws, separate but equal. All right. Their rationale was it's okay. We're separate, but it's equal. It really never was, but that was their rationale. So they're getting around all these laws. And the 15th Amendment guaranteed black men the right to vote. And how'd they get around that? Since they couldn't have a law that said you're black, you can't vote, it was, here's a literacy test. And if you get one question wrong, you fail. And we're going to really only give it to black people. All right. And sometimes that test will be a verbal test. And if we feel you pronounce the word incorrectly, guess what? You failed. These tests were designed to be failed. Or they would have poll taxes, where you'd have to pay a tax to vote, which would disqualify, financially speaking, uh, mostly sharecropping Southern African Americans. So they found ways around all these Reconstruction amendments, 13, 14, and 15.